The holographic feeds flickered across every screen in the war room, a sterile blue glow cutting through the dim hum of recycled air. Commander Elena Reyes, Lena, to those who'd survived the orbital skirmishes with her, stood at the head of the scarred conference table, her fingers drumming a silent rhythm on the edge of a tactical slate. The Aegis Cells bunker, buried under the sprawl of Mexico City's outskirts, felt smaller today, the walls pressing in like the Council's invisible grip. The announcement came without fanfare, a neutral voice from the orbital relay slicing through the chatter. The Axiom Council hereby publishes the official declaration of transference. Enforcement of human compliance protocols will now fall under ward authority. Stamped parchments bearing the Council seal are en route to all Earth capitals. Lena's jaw tightened. She watched the feed zoom in on Geneva, where a sleek drone descended like a mechanical bird of prey, depositing a single sheet of parchment into the hands of the UN Secretary-General. The seal shimmered, iridescent gold, etched with fractal patterns that no human scanner could fully replicate. It wasn't paper, it was something older, woven from alien substrates that bound words to reality. Sign it, and the ink would pulse with orbital commands, overriding national sovereignty in a heartbeat. Around the table, her team shifted uneasily. Javier, the comms specialist with a scar running from temple to jaw, muted the feed. They're moving fast. Drones hit Beijing and Washington within the hour. Lena nodded, her voice steady as plasteel. They always do. Governments will fold. It's not a question of if, it's how quickly they sell us out. She glanced at the slate, pulling up encrypted channels. Her brother Raoul's face appeared in a thumbnail. Safe for now, holed up in a nondescript apartment on the city's edge. But that wouldn't last. At 22, he was too young for this war, too idealistic to grasp the compromises she'd already made. Protecting him meant keeping him out of the crossfire, even if it carved her up inside. She activated the emergency protocol with a swipe. Evacuate Raoul to Safe House Delta, no delays. Tell him it's a drill if he argues. Her flaw gnawed at her. Duty first, always, even when it turned family into liabilities. Raoul would hate her for it, but hate was better than a ward beam vaporizing him for some biometric infraction. As the team scrambled, packing gear, sinking jammers, Lena's mind raced through the beats of resistance. Cell Aegis wasn't large. A dozen operatives, ex-Space Force like her, hardened by the first contacts that had promised alliance and delivered chains. The Council called it warding, orbital stations that monitored, judged, and culled. Non-compliance meant red beacons flaring in the skies, summoning enforcer dropships. But Lena knew humans. We'd adapt, subvert, strike back, politely if they let us, deadly if they didn't. By midday, the signatures rolled in. Lena tracked them from the bunker's Overwatch console, the world map lighting up in crimson as capitals capitulated. Brasilia first, then Ottawa. The parchment seals activating with a digital chime that echoed across global nets. The declaration's terms were brutally clear. National militaries disarmed for ward integration. Populations biometrically tagged for stability enforcement. No more human-led policing. The orbitals would decide who lived, who was culled for inefficiency, rebellion, or just bad luck. Lena's hands clenched. She'd lost squad mates to prototype wards during the integration wars. Good people, competent, gunned down because an algorithm deemed them threats. Now it was global. Her moral line held firm, sovereignty or death. But Raoul, if she pushed too hard, the cost might include him. She turned to Javier. Extraction team, status. ETA to Raoul's position, 10 minutes. He's packing now, grumbling but moving. Good. Establish protocols, rotating safe houses, ghost comms only. No pings that could triangulate. Lena's voice carried the calm of command, but inside, doubt flickered. Was she saving him or just delaying the inevitable? Her legitimacy as leader hinged on choices like this, rigid, unyielding. One slip and the cell would fracture. Across the continent, in the gleaming arcology of New Lagos, Dr. Aaron Mehta stared at the requisition notice on his terminal, the words blurring under the weight of exhaustion. The lab's sterile hum did little to drown out the distant clamor of the city. Markets buzzing, enforcer drones patrolling. Leela's laughter echoed from the adjacent room, where she played with a holographic puzzle, oblivious to the storm brewing. Arun's fingers hovered over the accept button. Coerced. That was the polite term for it. Years ago, he'd helped design the grid interfaces, bridging Earth's power nets to the Council's orbital arrays. A compromise, he'd told himself, to buy time, to protect his family. Now the declaration demanded more. Map the warding interfaces fully, integrate them into every urban grid. Refuse, and Leela's biometric tag would flag her for priority cull. He accepted, the terminal chiming approval. A council liaison appeared in hollow form, its avatar a featureless silhouette. Dr. Mehta, your expertise is required. Begin mapping immediately. First activations in 72 hours. Arun nodded, forcing politeness into his tone. Understood. I'll need access to the full ward schematics. Granted. Efficiency is paramount. The hollow vanished, leaving Aaron alone with the data streams. He dove in, his mind a whirlwind of equations and interfaces. The warding system was elegant, biometric locks tied to neural patterns, scanning for descent markers. But as he traced the feeds, a constraint emerged. The locks weren't absolute. Human variability, our chaotic biology, created gaps. A well-timed EMP could scramble them, or a forged tag could slip through. His heart pounded. This was redemption or damnation. Leela's safety depended on his work, but if he twisted it right, he could feed intel to resistors. His flaw stared back. Secrecy. The ease of bending ethics for survival. He'd collaborated once. Could he sabotage now without dooming her? Leela wandered in, her small hand tugging his sleeve. Papa, why's the sky on the news? They say signatures. Arun knelt, forcing a smile. Just grown-up papers, Beta. Nothing to worry about. But worry clawed at him, his fear of his inventions justifying eradication. He couldn't lose her, not to his own hands. In the polished halls of the African Union's diplomatic enclave, Maya Okonkwo smoothed her dashiki, the fabric a quiet defiance amid the suits and screens. The press conference loomed, cameras already whirring outside. The declaration's parchment lay on the podium, its seal gleaming under the lights, an artifact from stars that now owned Earth's fate. She'd seen the feeds, governments signing one by one, transferring authority to the orbitals. Wards would enforce, cull, control. Maya's district in New Lagos teetered on the edge. Adebayo's people, her partner of 15 years, reliant on her negotiations to stave off the worst. Publicly, she stepped to the mic, voice measured and warm. The African Union endorses full compliance with the official declaration. This is a step toward stability, minimizing loss of life. We urge all citizens to register biometrics promptly. The room erupted in questions, flashes popping. Maya fielded them with practiced grace. Yes, safeguards exist. No, it's not surrender, it's pragmatism. Inside, her motive burned. Save Adebayo's district, keep the body count low, but her flaw twisted it. Betray the broader fight for local gain. Sovereignty be damned if it meant graves. As the conference wrapped, she slipped into a side chamber, activating a hidden comms rig. The channel was old school, quantum encrypted, routed through black market relays. It connected to Lena Reyes, Aegis's shadow leader, a name whispered in resistance circles. Maya Okonkwo, she said softly when the line clicked. I need options, not for show, for real resistance. Static crackled, then Lena's voice, clipped and calm. You endorsed it publicly. Why reach out now? Because compliance buys time, Commander, but not freedom. My people need an out. What's Aegis planning? A pause, heavy with suspicion. Extraction protocols active. We're mapping ward gaps. But trust is earned, diplomat. What's your angle? Maya glanced at the parchment on the table, its seal mocking her. Local survival. Adebayo's district is first for tagging. Help me thread the needle. Compromise without full capitulation. Lena's response was measured, dangerous undertone laced with politeness. Send coordinates, we'll talk extraction. But if this is a ward trap, it's not. Maya's fear spiked. Exposure as traitor would shatter her credibility, leave her community exposed. But Adebayo, she couldn't lose him, couldn't watch his streets run red. The call ended, leaving Maya in the dim room, the weight of choices pressing down. Lena's bunker thrummed with activity as the hook dropped. The global feed interrupted every channel. First ward activations commence in 72 hours. Biometric compliance mandatory. Non-adherence will be enforced. She stared at the screen, the red beacon motif flashing, a warning flare, summoner of doom. Governments scrambled, issuing curfews. Resistors like her faced the crunch. Organize or die. Evacuate or sacrifice. Raul's secure, Javier reported, wiping sweat from his brow. But the grids are lighting up. Wards sinking. Lena nodded, her rigid duty locking in. Double the watch. Arun's feed just pinged. Biometric locks have flaws. Maya's on board. Tentatively. Moral complexity churned. Ally with a compromiser. Save Raul at the cost of broader autonomy? In his lab, Arun froze as the announcement hit. 72 hours. His mapping revealed the constraints. Locks vulnerable to human ingenuity, but activation would flood the grids. Leela ran to him, eyes wide. Papa? He pulled her close, secrecy cracking. We have time, Beta, just time. But fear gripped him. His work could save her or seal humanity's cage. Maya watched from her enclave, the city's lights flickering under emerging ward shadows. Adebayo texted, "Conference went well." She typed back, "For now." Public face intact, secret channel open. But the cost loomed. Betray the resistance or her people. 72 hours. Choices crystallized. Violent reclamation or pragmatic chains. Lena's cell mobilized. Arun's data flowed. Maya's negotiations bridged. Humanity's competence shone, calm, polite, ready to push back. But the scars of war whispered, nothing came free. Lena stepped outside the bunker into the twilight, the air thick with dust and distant sirens. The sky held no stars yet, just the faint orbital glint. She touched the comms earpiece. Aegis, stand ready. We choose sovereignty, whatever the price. The red beacon's threat hung, but so did resolve. Frightening, unyielding. Arun Mehta's fingers trembled over the holographic interface, the dim glow casting shadows across his cluttered workshop. Buried deep in the underbelly of an abandoned orbital relay station, the air hummed with the low whine of salvaged servers, each one a relic from his days collaborating with the Council. He hadn't touched this code in years, not since Leela's laughter had pulled him back from the edge of total surrender. But now, with the ward's red beacons pulsing like accusatory eyes over every city, redemption felt like a glitch he could exploit. The firmware scrolled past in encrypted streams, a labyrinth of alien algorithms he'd helped weave into Earth's defense grid. His motive was simple: save her. Leela, hidden in a compliance bunker with false biometrics, her small face etched in his mind like a scar. But the flaw gnawed at him. His secrets, the way he'd bent ethics before, whispering justifications to himself in the dead of night. What if this back door, this hidden vein he'd buried during the integration phase, turned out to be a trap, a way for the council to justify the cull? He isolated the subroutine, heart pounding as he fed it a test pulse. The code flickered, then stabilized. A controlled power spike, city-scale, routed through a regional grid, could overload the ward's surveillance matrix, blinding it for minutes, maybe hours, enough time to move people, to strike. Arun leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow, the weight of moral compromise settling like lead in his gut. This wasn't heroism, it was a desperate hack, born from the fear that his past work might doom them all. He encrypted the extraction, beaming it to Lena's secure channel. "It's viable," he typed, fingers hesitating, "but the spike will draw audits. Choose your risks carefully." In the shadowed command post beneath Chicago's ruins, Commander Lena Reyes stared at the incoming data, her jaw set like forged steel. The air smelled of rust and recycled oxygen. Aegis operatives murmuring in the low light as they prepped gear. Lena's world had narrowed to this: protect Raoul, her little brother, the last tether to a life before the Declaration stripped them of skies. Her flaw was the mission's iron grip, duty that blinded her to the fractures in her team, to the way Raoul's eyes pleaded for her to just run. She scanned Arun's schematic, the back door, a fragile thread in the Council's web. Sabotage the red beacon in Sector 7. Test it. Evacuate the eastern neighborhoods, the ones with the old resistance families. Risk the western fringe, the industrial sprawl where compliance drones patrolled. "Markov," she said, voice calm, polite even, but laced with the quiet danger of a blade unsheathed. Her second-in-command looked up from his console, face scarred from a ward skirmish. "Prep the spike generator. We hit the beacon at 0200. Evac teams to the east. Quiet, no traces. West stays dark." Markov nodded, but his eyes flicked with doubt. "And if the blind fails, we're painting a target on civilians." Lena met his gaze, unflinching. Humans didn't break under pressure. They adapted, lethally. "It won't. Aaron's work holds. We reclaim the night, one beacon at a time." Inside, fear coiled. Ordering evacuations meant choosing who lived, who became collateral. But sovereignty wasn't free. It demanded blood. She keyed the order, the weight of her moral leadership pressing down. One slip and she'd be no better than the Council, culling her own. Across the fractured sprawl of Lagos, Maya Okonkwo stood on a makeshift platform in Adebayo's district square, the humid night air thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth and fear. Hollow screens flickered behind her, broadcasting the Declaration's seal, parchment stamped in ethereal light, binding humanity to orbital oversight. Her partner, Adebayo, watched from the crowd, his face a mask of quiet pride, mixed with the exhaustion of holding their community together. Maya's motive burned clear: minimize the deaths, shield this pocket of life from the ward's biometric scythe. But her flaw whispered betrayal, pragmatism that carved out local safety at the expense of the wider fight, a diplomat's knife in the back of ideals. She raised her hands, voice steady, rallying the gathered faces etched with war's scars. "The Council offers a path, not surrender, but survival. Here, in this zone, we comply. Biometric scans, grid integration. In return, no culls, no strikes." Adebayo's district stands as proof. Humanity endures when we choose life over chaos. Murmurs rippled, some nodding, others glaring with the fire of resistance. Maya felt the fracture, her fear of exposure, of losing credibility if the truth of her deals surfaced. But for Adebayo, for the children huddled in doorways, she'd sign another seal. As the crowd dispersed, seals digitally inked on compliance packs, she slipped a message to her network. Shield the zone. No warnings to the radicals. Let Lena's games play out elsewhere. The sabotage unfolded like a shadow in the pre-dawn gloom of Sector 7. Lena's team moved with human precision, calm, coordinated, a frightening ballet of competence against the alien overseers. The spike generator hummed to life in a derelict warehouse, feeding the surge into the grid. Across the line, the red beacon atop the central tower pulsed erratically, its crimson light stuttering as Arun's back door clawed at the ward's eyes. For a heartbeat, it worked. Surveillance feeds blanked, the orbital ward drifting blind overhead. Aegis ghosts slipped through the western fringe, planting charges on the beacon's base, but the council didn't sleep. Audits fired like neural reflexes, alarms wailed in the ether, and high above, the ward's strike protocols engaged. Not on the beacon, but on a nearby settlement, a cluster of habdomes Lena hadn't marked for risk. The blast lit the horizon, a searing white bloom that shook the ground. Lena watched from her vantage, scope pressed to her eye as the settlement crumpled. Civilian loss tallied in screams and collapsing structures. Dozens, maybe hundreds, biometric signatures winking out. Her stomach twisted, the cost of the test etched in fire. "Pull back," she barked into comms, voice edged with the war-scarred grit that kept her team alive. But the damage rippled, the audit-locked grids, wards swarming like angry hornets. Chaos swallowed the streets. Raoul, scouting the evac perimeter, got caught in the spillover, detained by compliance enforcers sweeping the blast zone. Lena's comm crackled with his voice, clipped and afraid. "Sis, they got me. Eastern Edge. Biometrics flagged." Her brother's face flashed in her mind. The kid who'd followed her into hell, now paying for her orders. Flaw or not, duty cracked. "Rescue up now," she authorized, pulse racing. "Delta team, extract him. Coordinates incoming." The team moved, but in the frenzy, a tracker pinged. Aegis safehouse exposed, its location bleeding into the audit logs. Lena cursed under her breath, the moral weight crashing down. Her leadership, her legitimacy teetered on this knife's edge. Humans were dangerous when pushed, but at what price? Maya's secure line buzzed as the strike's aftershocks rolled in, hollow feeds showing the settlement's ruin. Adebayo's district held, shielded by her compliance zone, but Lena's channel lit up with demands. Full warning, evac routes, shared intel. Maya's fingers hovered over the reply, pragmatism warring with the guilt of fractured alliances. Withhold it, protect the zone, let the radicals absorb the heat. Her fear gnawed, exposure as traitor, losing the credibility that kept her people breathing. But for Adebayo, for the lives she'd sworn to save, she'd choose the betrayal. "No full evac data," she typed back. Voice in her head, polite, measured. "Zone integrity first. Handle your fallout." Trust shattered like glass, the message a quiet blade between leaders. Maya's hands shook as she sealed the transmission, the council's parchment motif mocking her from the screen. Survival, yes, but sovereignty slipped further away. In the orbital nexus, High Arbiter Vesh's form materialized on every compliant feed, his elongated silhouette a specter against the star field. The announcement cut through the chaos, voice resonant with unyielding authority. "Citizens of the bound world, a council emissary descends. Non-compliance invokes the culling protocol, biometric eradication without quarter. The seals bind you, honor them or perish." Lena, hunkered in the breached safehouse, felt the words like a noose tightening. Raoul's rescue hung in the balance, her team's shadows scattering under ward lights. Arun, monitoring from his relay, saw the audit deepen, his back door's glow dimming under scrutiny. Maya, in her shielded square, rallied her block tighter, the fracture with Lena a wound that festered. The red beacon's threat hung, but so did resolve, frightening, unyielding. Humans, morally tangled and lethally adept, pressed on into the storm they'd ignited. Maya's fingers tightened around the edge of the negotiation table, the polished obsidian surface cool against her skin despite the humid air of the orbital shuttle's conference chamber. The high Arbiter Vesh hovered before her, its elongated form a silhouette of iridescent chitin and glowing neural filaments, the air humming with the low thrum of its translation field. Vesh's voice emerged not from a mouth, but from the ether, a synthesized calm that bypassed her ears and resonated in her skull. Polite, always polite, as if humanity's unraveling were merely a tedious administrative oversight. Negotiator Okonkwo, it intoned, the words laced with that artificial patience. The Council appreciates your candor in these discussions, but candor alone will not suffice. The Aegis Cell's ward exploit threatens the stability of the integration protocols. Provide it to us, and we shall designate safe zones for your designated populations. Mercy, in exchange for compliance, Adebayo's district included. Maya's pulse quickened, but she kept her face neutral, years of diplomatic masks holding firm. Adebayo's face flashed in her mind, his quiet strength amid the ration lines, the way he'd pulled her from the rubble of the first ward strike 2 years back. She couldn't let his people become collateral in Lena's war. The exploit was Aegis's ace, a glitch in the orbital ward's targeting arrays that Lena had bled for, but Maya had glimpsed enough schematics in stolen data bursts to piece together a partial map, enough to bargain with if she played it right. She leaned forward, voice steady. Partial handover. You get the core algorithms, but no full access codes. And those zones, explicit guarantees etched in council parchment with the seal. No biometric overrides, no surprise calls. Vesh's filaments pulsed once, a ripple of consideration. Acceptable. The terms are logged. A holographic parchment materialized between them, the council's seal blooming like a blood-red flower across its surface. Maya signed with a projected stylus, her hand not trembling, couldn't afford to. As the shuttle docked back at the surface relay, she felt the weight settle. Betrayal wasn't a choice anymore. It was survival's sharp edge. In the dim underbelly of Lagos Prime's reclamation district, Maya moved like a shadow through the crowded market warrens, the air thick with the scent of spiced synth meat and ozone from flickering hollow screens. Her contact waited in a nondescript stall, a wiry operative named Kofi, one of Adebayo's trusted runners. She slid him the encrypted drive, its casing warm from her pocket. Partial schematics, she murmured, eyes scanning the throng for ward drones. Tell Vesh's emissary it's all they get for now, and mark these names for extraction, Lena's fringe players, the ones who won't break the cell's spine. The list was surgical. Low-level scouts, not the core like Raoul or the techs. Plausible deniability, she told herself. If Lena found out, it would fracture everything, but Adebayo's zone would breathe another cycle. Kofi nodded, pocketing the drive without a word, vanishing into the press of bodies. Maya lingered, the red beacon's distant pulse a warning in her periphery. Ward's enforcement call, always lurking. She wondered if this mercy was real or just another leash. Lena Reyes crouched in the alcove of an abandoned transit tube, her breath fogging the cracked visor of her tactical hood. The intercept had been clean, a ghosted signal from one of her embedded watchers, tracing Maya's handoff to Kofi's relay point. Now, as the runner emerged from the market, Lena's team closed in, silent, coordinated humans moving like predators in their own ruins. She signaled with a gloved hand, and her squad melted from the shadows. 4 operatives, Faces scarred by past skirmishes, weapons humming low. They pinned Kofi against a rusted bulkhead before he could transmit. Lena stepped forward, yanking the drive from his pocket, her voice a controlled blade. "Talk. What did Maya give up?" Kofi's eyes darted, sweat beading despite the chill. "Just partials, for the zones. She's saving lives, Commander. Adebayo's people—" Lena's grip tightened on his collar, but she released him with a shove, plugging the drive into her wrist rig. The schematics unfolded in her HUD. Ward exploit fragments, enough to neuter half their arsenal, and the names, her people, marked for extraction, betrayal, raw and public if word spread. She stormed the compliance block's safe house an hour later, the door hissing open under her override code. Maya stood at a console, holographic maps flickering, but she didn't flinch as Lena burst in, drive clutched like evidence. "You sold us out," Lena snarled, slamming the device on the table. The room's other occupants, minor aides, froze, the air thickening with unspoken fracture. "Those names are my scouts. Extraction, that's a Ward euphemism for vanishing." Maya turned, her expression a mask of weary resolve, eyes meeting Lena's without apology. "I gave partials, enough to buy time for the zones. Adebayo's district is slated for cull in 48 hours. You want to fight the Wards head-on? Fine, but I won't let my people pay for your war." Lena's hand twitched toward her sidearm, the moral line she'd drawn, never civilians, never her own, blurring under the rage. "This jeopardizes everything. Raoul's out there because of that exploit. My brother Maya, and you handed over for what? Local safety?" Maya stepped closer, voice dropping to a fierce whisper, the aides averting eyes as the confrontation turned public in the tight space. "Sovereignty's worthless if we're all ash. Compromise now or watch the zones burn. I won't jeopardize Adebayo for your ideals." The words hung, a chasm opening. Lena holstered her weapon, turning away before she crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Betrayal stung deeper than any Ward strike. Public, personal, eroding the legitimacy she'd built on unyielding duty. As she exited into the night, the red beacon flared brighter in the sky, a promise of enforcement closing in. Arun Mehta's lab was a buried vein in Mumbai's undergrid, walls lined with jury-rigged interfaces and the faint glow of council tech he'd once helped design. His hands, steady from years of precision work, now trembled slightly as he initiated the backdoor upload. The partial schematics from Maya's bargain were incomplete, forcing a risky field test, bypassing the Ward's biometric locks in a live sector. Leela's face kept surfacing in his thoughts, her small hand in his during evac drills, the daughter he'd collaborated for, only to chain them all tighter. "Commence integration," he muttered to the console, voice echoing in the empty space. The code streamed upward, threading into the orbital grid. For a heartbeat it held, then feedback surged, a cascade failure rippling through the city's power lattice. Alarms blared as the blackout hit, lights guttered out across the sprawl, transit pods screeching to halts, hab blocks plunging into darkness. Arun watched in horror as secondary systems overloaded. Ward drones misfiring into crowded avenues. Screams filtered through the vents, civilian fatalities unintended, a dozen at least from the initial reports flickering on his backup screen. His flaw, that readiness to bend ethics for a technical fix, had just carved a wound in the Resistance's heart. He slumped against the console, the weight of it crushing. Redemption. This was just another compromise, bloodier than the last. The Council's broadcast pierced the blackout's aftermath like a scalpel, Vesh's voice booming from every surviving holoscreen and neural implant. The disruption in Mumbai sector is deemed terrorism by Aegis elements. Biometric tagging is now active. Flagged individuals will be processed for stability. Arun's rig pinged, a personal alert. He pulled up the scan, heart seizing as Leela's profile loaded, flagged. Her biometrics tied to his own access logs marked her as a potential collaborator's kin. The Council's logic was merciless, guilt by association, culling the roots. He stared at the glowing tag, the red beacon pulsing outside his viewport, calling enforcers. His work, meant to save her, had painted a target. Panic clawed up his throat, but he swallowed it, fingers already flying to mask her signal. Another risk, another ethical bend. In the shadowed command nest of Aegis's forward base, Lena paced the confines, the failed intercept with Maya still burning. Reports flooded in, blackout deaths, council spin branding them terrorists. Her team, Raoul among them, watched her, expectant. The moral line she'd clung to frayed further. Vesh's emissary, a mid-level arbiter proxy named Thal, was en route to seal Maya's deal. An assassination could disrupt it, buy time. Covert strike, she ordered, voice clipped, mapping the route on the tackboard. Small team, neural disruptors only, no traces. Raoul protested quietly, too risky, civilians in the path. But she overrode him, Judy's rigidity blinding her to the cost. Her fear of ordering civilian executions loomed, but this was targeted, necessary, or so she told herself. The op went south in the relay spire's underlevels. Thal's guard detail anticipated the breach, chitin-armored enforcers swarming from hidden vents. Lena's fighters, 6 strong, fought with human ferocity, improvised EMP bursts, close-quarters takedowns, calm under fire even as rounds chewed the walls. But the emissary slipped away, shielded by a ward pulse that fried 2 of her team outright, their bodies crumpling in sprays of blood and sparks. Lena dragged Raoul from the collapse, her side grazed, the failure a gut punch. 3 dead, the cell gutted, and Thal lived to enforce the bargain. Back in the nest, she stared at the blood on her gloves, the line crossed. Not executions, but deaths on her order, pushing her past the commander who protected without becoming the monster. Moral leadership? It felt like ash now, sovereignty's price etched in her team's sacrifice. The council's announcement followed at dawn, Vesh's proclamation echoing across the grids. Biomarked bracelets activate immediately. Flagged individuals are scheduled for formal cull in 7 days. Compliance ensures stability. Resistance invites escalation. Maya heard it in Adebayo's zone, the bracelets clamping onto wrists with a cold snap. Hers included a temporary marker for negotiation leverage. Lena, in hiding, felt the noose tighten, her resolve hardening into something lethal. Arun, shielding Leela's signal, knew the storm was just breaking. Humans pressed on, tangled in their choices, the red beacon a relentless glare overhead. Lena Reyes crouched in the dim glow of the Aegis safehouse, the air thick with the scent of recycled oxygen and gun oil. Her fingers traced the holographic map projected from the battered console, lines of orbital trajectories flickering like veins across the screen. The red beacon hung in the sky outside, a merciless eye watching from low orbit, its pulse a constant reminder of the Council's grip. She could feel it in her bones, the anger from the bracelets snapping shut, on wrists across the city, marking them like cattle. But anger was fuel, and she wouldn't let it burn her out. "Raoul," she said quietly, not looking up. Her brother sat across from her, his face gaunt under the harsh light, fiddling with a stolen council transponder. He was the reason she fought this hard, the one tether keeping her from becoming just another cog in the machine. But duty came first. It always had. "We hit the ward nexus, neutralize it before they tighten the noose any further." The room held a dozen of Aegis's best, hardened fighters from the old Space Force days, their eyes scarred by the same losses. Jax, her second, leaned in, his voice a low rumble. "Steal a red beacon, that's suicide bait. Lure a Corvette down here and we're painting targets on our backs." Lena met his gaze, calm as polished steel. "Exactly. The Corvette's our boarding vector. They drop low to respond to the beacon's distress. We hitch a ride on its underbelly grapples. Infiltrate the nexus from inside." She tapped the map, zooming on the orbital station, a spindly lattice of council tech, humming with the biometric colors that had already claimed thousands. Purge the database, overload the enforcement protocols, no more bracelets, no more arbitrary wipes. Murmurs rippled through the group. Raoul shifted, his flaw showing in the way he avoided her eyes. Too soft for this, always had been, but loyal enough to stay. And if the Corvette calls reinforcements, we're down to half our shuttles after the last raid. "Then we make it count," Lena said, her voice even, polite in its lethality. Humans didn't break, they adapted, turned the enemy's tools against them. "We move at dawn. Steal the beacon from the perimeter patrol. Jax, you lead the lure team. I'll board with the core strike." The plan solidified around her words, beats of strategy falling into place like rounds chambering. But as they dispersed to prep gear, Lena felt the weight of it, the rigid duty that kept her pushing, even as it strained the bonds she couldn't afford to lose. Raoul lingered, his hand brushing hers. "Sis, it's escalating. What if—" "No ifs," she cut him off, softer than she meant. "We reclaim what's ours, or we lose everything." He nodded, but the doubt in his eyes mirrored her own buried fear. Ordering her people into the fire, knowing some wouldn't come back. Across the sprawl of the capital, in the shadowed labs beneath the university spires, Arun Mehta hunched over his workstation. The hum of servers a white noise against the storm in his chest. Leela's face flickered on a hidden comms feed, her small form huddled in the safe bunker he'd jury-rigged. "Papa, the lights are flickering again. Is it them?" "It's nothing, Beta," he lied, his voice steady for her sake. But the anger simmered, hot and unyielding. The bracelets had clamped on her wrist too, a temporary tag, but one that could turn permanent if the Council deemed her a threat. He'd collaborated once, helped weave Earth's grid into their orbital web, thinking it would buy time. Now that regret gnawed at him, his flaw in full bloom, the secrecy that let him bend ethics for survival. The research core loomed before him, a cylindrical vault of pulsing conduits, its interface glowing with stolen Council code. Aegis had reached out through encrypted channels. Lena's voice clipped and urgent. "Rig it to overload the Nexus during the boarding." He could do it, redirect the core's fusion stabilizers, channel a surge straight into the station's heart. But the backlash. Arun keyed in the sequence, fingers flying across the haptic board. The simulation bloomed, energy spike ripping through the Nexus, frying databases, halting enforcement. But the ripple effect, it would cascade down, overload the metropolitan grid, blackout across the core districts, hospitals dark, transports stalled, lives disrupted, maybe lost in the chaos. He paused, glancing at Leela's feed, her eyes, so like her mother's, wide with unspoken fear. His motivation burned clear. Redeem this, protect her from the colors he'd helped enable. But the cost? Compromising again, this time with Aegis's blood on his hands. "It's necessary," he muttered to the empty lab, acknowledging the brutal truth. The surge would collapse the grid, yes, but it might save thousands from the ward's judgment. He initiated the remote link, embedding the overload trigger in the core's firmware. One signal from the boarding team, and it would fire. As the code locked in, Arun felt the moral fracture deepen. His work, once a bridge to the stars, now a weapon. But for Leela, he'd cross any line. The anger from the bracelets fueled him. Humans weren't pawns. They built, they broke, they endured. Maya Okonkwo stood at the edge of Adebayo's district, the sprawl of makeshift barricades and flickering hollow signs a testament to her fragile empire. The air smelled of rain-slick concrete and desperation, the red beacon's glare casting long shadows over the crowds. Her partner, Adebayo, gripped her arm, his face etched with the wear of endless negotiations. "You volunteered us as cover? Maya, that's exposing everything we've built." She turned to him, her expression composed, polite even in the tension. But inside, the pragmatism warred with guilt. Her flaw, the willingness to trade the big picture for the lives she could touch. The bracelets had snapped on here too, cold metal biting skin, a leverage play from the council. Hers marked her as a negotiator, a temporary shield. But for the district, mercy had to be bought. "Aegis needs evacuation routes," she said, voice low. "The boarding op, it's their shot at the Nexus. We provide cover, funnel civilians out under the guise of drills. It saves lives." Adebayo searched her eyes, seeing the half-truth. He knew her too well. The way she balanced motives, minimized deaths here, protect their home, even if it meant bending on the sovereignty front. But as he nodded reluctantly, Maya slipped away to the shadowed comms booth, her heart pounding. The leak had to be precise. Timing of the op, just enough to let the council pull punches on this zone. She patched into the encrypted diplomatic line, the one she'd kept open as a back door. "This is Okonkwo, coordinates for Mercy Exemption, Adebayo's district. In exchange, the operation launches at 600. Beacon theft first." The council's response was a digital chill, acknowledgement without warmth. "Noted. Zone secured." She cut the line, leaning against the wall, breath ragged. Betrayal? Maybe. But it bought safety for thousands, kept Adebayo breathing. Her fear clawed at her. Exposure would shatter her credibility, turn her community against her. Yet the anger from the bracelets pushed her. Humans negotiated, compromised, survived. Sovereignty was a luxury when bodies piled up. Dawn broke gray and unforgiving, the capital stirring under the beacon's watch. Lena's team moved like ghosts through the perimeter patrols, Jax's squad snatching the red beacon from a hovering drone with a precise EMP burst. The device thrummed in her hands, its activation code a siren call to any council vessel. She triggered it from the shadows of a derelict warehouse, the pulse ripping skyward. High above, the corvette responded, a sleek dagger of alien alloy, dipping into low orbit with predatory grace. Aegis shuttles, jury-rigged from scavenged parts, latched onto its underbelly as it descended, magnetic grapples biting silent. Lena led the boarding, her team cutting through an access hatch with plasma torches. The corvette's corridors were sterile, humming with automated defenses, but humans were adaptable. Her fighters jammed sensors, moved in tight, coordinated bursts. They spilled into the Nexus proper, a vast chamber of glowing databanks and enforcement nodes, the air crisp with ozone. Alarms wailed as they purged sections, Raoul at her side, slicing code to erase biometric locks, targeting the cull protocols. "It's working," he gasped, sweat beading on his brow. Lena nodded, her rifle sweeping the geometry of the space. Elevated walkways, choke points at the core relays. They pushed forward, calm, under fire, returning precise bursts that dropped council drones in showers of sparks. But the surge hit like a hammer. Arun's remote trigger fired from the labs below, the research core channeling raw power upward. The Nexus shuddered, databanks erupting in cascades of overload, databases fracturing under the assault. Lena felt the deck buck, her team purging the last nodes before evac. Victory tasted metallic, hard won. Then the backlash. The energy wave rippled down, invisible but devastating, metropolitan grid collapsing in a domino wave. Lights died across the city core, screams echoing from the blacked-out streets. Hospitals plunged into darkness, transports slamming to halts mid-air. Lena's comms crackled with reports. Half her fighters gone, shredded by a Corvette counterboarding team that had anticipated the lure. Jax's voice cut through, ragged. "We're hit! Evac now!" She hauled Raoul toward the extraction point, the cost sinking in like shrapnel. Competent, yes. They'd crippled the Nexus. Bought time. But the grid's fall? That was on her, on all of them. Moral complexity in the blood on the deck plates. Maya watched from the district's edge, the blackout swallowing the capital in waves. Her leak had worked. Council enforcers bypassed Adebayo's zone, mercy granted in the chaos. Civilians streamed out under her organized cover, drills turning real as panic spread. Adebayo pulled her close amid the exodus. "You did this," he whispered, accusation and gratitude tangled. She nodded, the weight of her choice pressing down. Lives saved here, but the ops' timing exposed. The Council's retaliation swift. It came as an orbital decree, broadcast from the surviving platforms. Emergency Ward Nova schedule. The capital locked down, biometric fields activating in 48 hours. Sterilization beams would scour urban centers. Culling resistors unless demands were met. Surrender the cell leaders. Accept full integration. No compromise, just the hammer. Lena regrouped in the safehouse ruins. The surviving Aegis fighters battered, Raoul's arm bandaged from a graze. The blackout hummed outside, a city in grief. Arun's face appeared on the comms, haunted. The overload worked, but the grid, "I'm sorry." Maya's channel patched in next, her voice tight. "They're locking us in. Nova in 2 days." Lena stared at the flickering map, the Council's platform looming in orbit, a final bastion. Her resolve hardened, lethal and polite in its clarity. Full-scale assault? Storm the beast head-on, risk everything for sovereignty, or negotiate surrender terms, save what lives she could, at the cost of the autonomy she'd bled for. The choice clawed at her, duty versus the people. Moral integrity fracturing under the stakes. Raoul watched her, silent as the anger coalesced into decision's edge. Humans pressed on, but at what price? Lena's fingers tightened on the edge of the tactical console, the holographic map pulsing like a wound under her gaze. The orbital platform hung there, indifferent, its Ward Nova link threading down to the processing hub in the capital's shadow. A squat fortress of alloy and encrypted spires bristling with automated defenses. Raoul's eyes bored into her from across the dim command tent, his face a mask of quiet accusation. She could feel the weight of it, the fracture lines in her resolve. Storm the hub, trigger Arun's sabotage manually, and maybe, sever the link before the Council's cull swept through the streets. Or signal Maya to fold, accept the envoy's latest ultimatum, and watch autonomy bleed out in exchange for a few spared lives. The comms crackled. A new transmission pierced the static, Vesh's voice, the Council's envoy, cool and unyielding as vacuum. "Commander Reyes, this is Enclave Vesh. We present a sealed declaration stamped with the original Council seal. Trial of humanity commences. Your species stands at the precipice. Surrender the Aegis cell and submit to biometric integration, or the wards will commence full enforcement. The choice is yours." But the clock ticks. The words landed like shrapnel. Lena's jaw set, a polite fury coiling in her chest. Humans didn't beg, they endured, they struck. "Raoul," she said, voice level, "rally the squads. We're hitting the hub. Full assault, no quarter." He nodded once, sharp, and moved without a word, his limp from the last skirmish barely slowing him. Lena keyed her rifle's charge, the hum vibrating through her gloves. Duty first, always, even if it meant leaving bodies in her wake. The assault launched under a bruised dawn. Aegis squads slipping through the capital's outer sprawl like ghosts in the fog. Lena led from the front, her team threading razor-wire barricades and drone patrols with practiced silence. The air reeked of ozone and cordite, the distant thunder of ward strikes rumbling like an approaching storm. Her HUD flickered with overlays, thermal ghosts of council sentries, red blips marking the hub's core where Aaron's sabotage waited, dormant without a manual trigger. "Flank left," she whispered into her comm, polite even in command. "Sentries at 11 o'clock, neutralize quiet." Her squad, hardened remnants, faces scarred from orbital drops and groundside purges, fanned out, suppressing fire minimal, blades and suppressed rounds doing the work. One Marine, Thomas, took a grazing shot to the shoulder, grunting as he patched it mid-stride. No time for pity. Lena pushed on, her boots crunching over shattered permacrete, the hub's silhouette rising like a judgment. Inside, the corridors were a labyrinth of humming conduits and biometric locks, the air thick with the sterile tang of alien tech. Alarms wailed as they breached the outer ring, council drones swarming like hornets. Lena's rifle barked, precise bursts dropping two, her team covering the breach. "Aaron," she hissed into the open channel. "We're in. Status on the kill sequence?" Static, then Aaron's voice strained from his hidden relay in the grid underbelly. "Lena, it's prepped, but it needs more. My passcodes, Leela's signature, live, and mine." A pause, heavy as lead. "My death to execute. The system's rigged against overrides, council's failsafe." Her pulse spiked, but she kept her tone even, dangerous calm masking the gut punch. Aaron, brilliant, broken Aaron, offering his life like it was just another variable. For Leela, for redemption. "Understood. Get it done. We're at the core, in two." The fighting intensified, a brutal grind through security nodes. Lena's squad lost two, Maria vaporized by a plasma vent, Javier gutted in close quarters before they reached the central chamber. The Nova Link thrummed there, a colossal pillar of woven energy pulsing red like a vein. Consoles ringed it, screens alive with cull protocols, names, faces, biometrics flashing for termination. Civilians, families, her people. Lena slammed a breach charge, the door crumpling inward. Guards, council hybrids, half-machine enforcers poured out, but her team was ready. She rolled left, rifle up, dropping the lead with a headshot that sprayed ichor across the deck. "Cover me!" Polite order, lethal intent. She darted to the nearest console, fingers flying over the interface, Arun's backdoor code unlocking the sabotage prompt, but it hung there, inert. "Arun, now!" Far below, in the grid's bowels, Arun Mehta knelt beside a jury-rigged terminal, the chamber a coffin of flickering lights and exposed wiring. Leela huddled nearby, her small hands trembling as she pressed her palm to the biometric scanner. 8 years old, eyes wide with the terror of a world unraveling, but she didn't cry, not his girl. "Papa, it hurts," she whispered, the scanner drawing a pinprick of blood for verification. Arun's throat tightened. His life's work, a grid that once promised connection, now a noose, staring back from the screens. He'd built this interface, woven human code with council mandates, all to shield Leela from the first waves of enforcement. Compromise after compromise, ethical lines blurred until they vanished. Now the kill sequence demanded everything, his passcodes, her live sig, and his heart stopping to bypass the final lock. No half measures, the council had seen to that. "I know, Beta," he murmured, voice cracking but steady. He pulled her into a one-armed hug, the other hand initiating the transmit. Data surged, sabotage protocols flooding the hub's systems, designed to overload the Nova Link and fracture the orbital ward's control. But the endpoint blinked. Execute via terminal authentication, his own vitals spiking to 0. Leela looked up, understanding dawning too soon. "You're not coming back," He forced a smile, the flaw in him, the secrecy, the deals with devils, laid bare. You protect the others now. Be brave. A concealed injector slid into his palm, Council Tech repurposed. One press and his heart would seize, feeding the sequence live. For her, for the autonomy he'd helped erode. Transmit starting. Lena, it's yours. The line went dead. Arun pressed the injector home, pain blooming like fire, then nothing. His body slumped, the console beeping confirmation. Authentication complete. Leela's sob echoed in the dark as the data raced upward. Back at the hub, Lena's console lit up, Arun's sequence integrating. But the chamber shook, external blasts rocking the structure, ward enforcements closing in. Her team held the line, but casualties mounted. Thomas went down screaming, a drone's blade through his chest. Blood slicked the floor, the air choked with smoke. Then Maya's voice cut through the chaos on a priority channel. Lena, hold fire, ceasefire in effect. Vesh has agreed to terms. Lena's grip whitened on her rifle. Maya, pragmatic Maya, always the negotiator, mid-battle. She glanced at the feed. Outside, red beacons flared, calling off ward strikes as diplomats converged on a neutral spire. Maya Okonkwo stood there in the projection, flanked by Adebayo's aides, her face a fortress of calculated calm. The flaw in her, betraying the big fight for local salvation, burned clear now. Vesh loomed opposite, the envoy's form a holographic specter. Elongated and alien, the new declaration unrolled on a virtual parchment, sealed, stamped, its words glowing. Trial of humanity commences. But Maya had twisted it, her voice sharp over the link. Enclave Vesh, we exchange formal planetary autonomy for the exile of the eastern and southern provinces. No further culls in the core districts, and legal condemnation of Aegis as terrorists, on paper only, to fracture your grip. Vesh's eyes narrowed, but the math checked. Lives saved, control diluted. Accepted, the wards stand down, but the provinces burn as example. Sign. Maya's hand trembled as she pressed her seal to the parchment, the digital ink binding it. Adebayo squeezed her shoulder, his district spared. For now, but the cost clawed at her. Broader sovereignty gutted, Aegis branded outlaws. Her community breathed, but her soul carried the weight. No more illusions of clean diplomacy. Compromise was her blade now, honed on betrayal. The ceasefire rippled outward, drones powering down, strikes halting. Lena's squad pulled back, breathing ragged, but she didn't stop. Arun's sequence was live, halfway there. Maya, you bought us time, she transmitted, voice edged with ice. But we're finishing this. Lena, the hub's rigged, evac the civilians. Maya's plea crackled, but Lena was already at the override panel. The Nova link pulsed faster, sensing the sabotage. Alarms screamed, civilian zones compromised. Detonation imminent. She slammed the manual trigger, polite resolve turning lethal. For autonomy. The core ignited, a chain reaction ripping through the hub. Explosions bloomed, the pillars shattering in a cascade of energy, severing the ward link with a thunderous crack that echoed to orbit. The platform above flickered, its enforcements fracturing. Strategic victory, the Council's grip splintered across the grid, but the backlash hit like a hammer. Feedback surges tore through the capital's undergrid. Power stations overloading, hab blocks collapsing in fireballs. Screams filled the comms, thousands caught in the blast radius, civilians pulverized in the unintended cull. Lena staggered from the hub's ruins, Raoul dragging her clear as the structure imploded. Her face, smeared with soot and blood, twisted at the feeds. Streets aflame, bodies in the rubble, her order, her cost. Raoul's hand on her arm was the only anchor. We did it, sis, but God. She nodded, the moral fracture complete. sovereignty reclaimed, at the price of innocence. Duty had won, but leadership, that legitimacy bled out with the dead. In the aftermath, as Ward remnants withdrew and Earth's fractured government scrambled, they accepted the concessions: punitive autonomy, provinces exiled, Aegis labeled terrorists on every broadcast. The Council's hold cracked, but humanity's hands were stained, the trial's seal mocking from surviving parchments. Maya stood amid the diplomats, the signed clause in her grip, a lone survivor from the Declaration, protecting children under 18 from further biometrics. Her eyes, hardened now, scanned the horizon where smoke rose. Adebayo at her side, but the betrayal lingered in her posture. No more soft negotiator. She'd wield this compromise like a weapon, leverage for the next fight. Survival demanded it, even if integrity shattered. Lena watched from the shadows, rifle slung, the red beacons dimming across the city. Humans pressed on, competent, complex, dangerous. But the price? It echoed in every breath, a war-scarred reminder. Sovereignty or souls, and neither came free.